Hello and welcome to the second half of the course. I'm Barb and I'm going to take a stab at doing the introduction today. Uh, so I'm pretty much going to just go over the introductory section that I wrote already and sort of hit the high points with this, sort of to get you used to my face and my voice before we dive in. I just finished reading all of the discussion from the first half and I'm so excited to see what you come up with for the second half. So thanks to Christy for setting the bar a little higher than I'm comfortable with, but whatever, we'll move on. It'll be great. Um, so let's see. If I were to have a textbook for this class, it would be this. Michael Cart's Young Adult Fiction from Romance to Realism. And it's so funny, I'm working on a project this summer about mid 20th century teen girl novels. Anyway, I was looking at this fairly obscure writer, and Michael Cart had written an article about her. I was like, Michael Cart, we might be soulmates. So it's a terrific book. It's a really interesting overview of the history of YA and then going into sort of more contemporary issues. So I have not yet read the whole thing because, it's summer. I'm reading a lot of garbage right now, but I'm going to go through that and see what might be useful and maybe do some sections for this. But if you can get your hands on a copy, some of the library consortiums around have it. So let's see, what else? There are some booklist books. Anita Silvey's 500 Great Books for Teens. It's a little long in the tooth now, but I love her little introductions, and I think that I pull a couple of those for my own introductions. Nancy Pearl's Book Crush, Genre Reflecting, A Guide to Reading Interests, excuse me, is a series, but there's a teen one, and then Essentials of Young Adult Literature by Kathy Short, who has been a professor of Christie's, so it all comes around. So booklist books are a great way, but of course we have the internet now, and also we have other humans. So many of you have teens in your life. Ask them if they're readers, what's up with them. Okay, so the sort of 3.5 strands of assignments in this class. The first and probably the most like loosey-goosey is the book blog. So first week 7, set up your book blog. If you already have a blog, you can use that if you want, or set up a new one. And just 3 to 5 titles a week, depending whatever the topic is of the week. And there's the annotation is in the rubric section, but I want you to have, when it was published, where you found it, how did you hear about it, why you think it would appeal to teens. And I feel like there's something else there, but read the rubric, it'll tell you for sure. Blogging is super easy to set up. Most of you probably have some experience with it. If not, Blogger is a Google tool, or WordPress is also quite handy. There was another one that I just used that is escaping me. You'll find a lot of video of me staring off into the distance, trying to remember something for the next 6 weeks. Try to keep it to a minimum. All right, so you're going to choose those books, put them in your blog, and you're going to put the blog link in the assignment key or assignment tool. And when you do that, make sure that you use I mentioned this a billion times, but because it's really frustrating when I'm trying to grade. So what you do is after you've written your blog, make sure that you're not logged in as a writer, that you're just looking at your blog, open it up in a different window, and then click on the title of that week's blog post, and that will bring you to the dedicated URL. Just go up to the bar, copy and paste it, and put that into the assignment tool. And that'll take me specifically to the blog post that you're referencing. Now, that being said, for week 7, for the first one, you don't have to have content if you don't want to. We all know award winners. You talked about that with Christy too. So really just, if you have, if you want to just put up a little something about what you like, that's fine. But you can just put your general blog address for that one, and then I'll put a document together with everybody's blog on it and post it somewhere so that you can visit other people's blogs, should you so desire. The discussion, which you're clearly great at, is ongoing. We'll have readings, so you can have topical discussion about the readings that are going on, and then we'll have the book discussion blog. You should, when you're posting, put the title of the book that you're discussing. at the top of your post. And that way, if somebody isn't reading it, or if somebody's, has read their book but is looking at reading another one, doesn't want any spoilers, but go ahead and put spoilers. That's what it's about. So, we're talking about it in depth. We're going to assume that everybody's read everything because, it's the class. All right, so those are the discussions. Those are 7-point discussions I will give you a little bit of feedback on the discussion in the blog. Most of the feedback that I'm going to give you is going to be based on your reading response, because that's sort of a more personal look. You're getting feedback from one another in the discussion, and the blog is just kind of a resource that you're creating. But the response pieces are really sort of where you show your own philosophy of young adult literature, if you will. So the response piece generally is going to be a 3 to 5 page paper. Some people just like that, knowing what to do, putting it up there, and that's fine. But you can also, do something else. You can do sort of a book talk format. You can do something audiovisual, a podcast, whatever you want to do, however you want to show evidence that you have read the book and considered it as literature and are now letting me know what you think. So those are the 3, and I called it 3.5 because there's 2 discussions this time around. Email me if you have any problems. So, oh, wow, I am at the bottom of the introductory thing. I thought I was going to go through what the topics were, which I'm just going to click over to the modules here so that we can talk about them briefly. So week 7 is called Hunting the Elusive YA Book, and that's about award winners and about how to find books, and that's already up. And then week 8 is What Teens Like, Sexy Books. Really, it's books about relationships, primarily romantic, and then LGBTQIA plus content, how, especially at the high school level, well, middle school and high school. You discussed it a bit in realistic fiction. In elementary school, you're looking at sort of, the broader picture of society, and, someone having 2 mommies, or, someone being trans, and sort of how that, fits into the world, but it's not the relationship piece of it. When you get into high school, kids love romance, and they love reading about that heart-pounding feeling, and kids like to see themselves represented in books. So that's part of it there. So week 9, What Teens Like, Scary Books. And again, I was reading, how many of you have not read Stephen King? Shocking. The Stand, I read it every year. But generally, I'm not a scary book person. And so we're also looking at books that are essentially realistic fiction, maybe a little dystopia too, but books that help kids face their fears is kind of how we're looking at that. And then the secondary topic is bibliotherapy, the idea that a book can help a kid through something or deal with something. We'll look at that a little bit. Week 10 is What Teens Like, Geeky Books, science fiction and fantasy, and that and you talked about that a little bit in the speculative fiction section, which was very cool to read about. And this is really, we're kind of just going to look at what's out there, because it becomes a huge thing, and there's so many series books, and kids can get it's a great way to hook kids. They will start with one book and go on in the rest of the series. We're also going to look at Reader's Advisory, which is basically just, when a kid comes up to you, my favorite, when a kid comes up and says, "Do you have any good books in this library?" To which I reply, "No, they all suck. I am terrible at my job." And then proceed to help them find something. So I'll look at Reader's Advisory and how that works in the middle school and high school library. Excuse me. Week 11, we're looking at nutritious books. That's nonfiction and historical fiction. And we're going to look at some curriculum connections here. It's sometimes difficult. It depends on your school community. I found a little bit less resistance now to YA, but when I first got there and I was all like, on fire for YA, I had some resistance about it not being really, useful in an educational setting. But there's so many nonfiction books, and I found a great article in School Library Journal about graphic memoirs. If you're probably familiar with March, the John Lewis series about the Civil Rights Movement, and his story. But Persepolis, I would argue Mouse, although that's not first person, but graphic novels and how they can appeal to teens, especially teens who aren't necessarily invested readers. Those Don Brown books are phenomenal. So we're going to look at those a little bit, look at some nonfiction, and then finally, week 12 is what teens like, just in general. What are they looking at now? So we'll look at series books and how those can be a good hook for kids. We'll look at fandoms, which I don't know a lot about, but I'm kind of excited about. And then those fad reads, like what's the thing? Somebody had referenced, well, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, of course, which I also passed around and hid under my mattress. Nobody mentioned Forever. I guess that's because it was children's lit. Oh. But what is it called? Flowers in the Attic. I remember hiding that one too. Yikes. Anyway, so we're going to look at what teens, what they're actually reading, what they're passing around to one another, and that's a moving target. And one of the readings for week 12, my favorite, and I almost wanted to start with it, but it's a nice way to wrap it up. Is it's a chapter called "Getting My Period" from Lizzie Skernick's oh dear Lord, Lizzie Skernick's phenomenal book that I can't remember the name of, but it's all about sort of the YA books that she grew up with, and she has different writers writing essays. It's tremendous. If only I could remember the title, I could recommend it for you. But when we get to week 12, you'll have a couple more weeks of summer and you can pick it up if you want. Gosh, I wish I could. It's right there. Anyway, and that's about her early life as a reader, her life as a teen reader. And if you want for that response, everybody's reading their own book. If you are invested in your book and you want to do your response piece about that, that's fine. But you also have the option of doing your response piece on your own reading history, particularly as a teenager with YA. So you can work on that. And then the final project is a reading, it's a literacy promotion event, and that will be there's a bunch of different topics you can use. I'll have articles that deal with those in the, I'll put them down in the final project section, but I'll mention them in the weekly content page. And there'll be some links, things that you can look for. And I would start thinking about it now, because as you're doing your blog, you're going to be looking through a lot of different books, and you might find something that will help you with that. So I just want to get back here again and let you know that I have looked at Christie's sets of resources for the week, and dang, she is really good. I'm a little concerned following her. I'm not going to have as many. I have 3 to 5 probably resources a week, and they're generally written rather than video, just because I don't know. I feel like with young adult literature, the books are longer. It's going to be more investment in you reading the actual works, which is what I like to focus on. There'll, be a little bit of theory on the side, but I want to give you time. My favorite thing, I proctor the SATs and the ACTs, and my favorite thing to do is just take a stack of like 12 books and read the first 20 pages of all of them while the kids are taking the test. And it's a great way to sort of just, dip your toes. And of course, it's also a great way of developing a to be read pile as long as your arm. But, oh well, the dangers of being a school librarian. All right, so I believe that I have exhaustively told you everything that you need for the second section, and I will, generally I put up the content video. I'll try to have all my content up this week and next week, but I'll put up the content video for each week the Saturday before it goes up. So I will see you on the discussion boards, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Bye.